Welcome to homework.
This video deals with regulatory capture, including what it is, what causes it, and a few examples too. First, here's some background. There are times in economics when we may want to regulate things. Now, all the reasons why this is the case is beyond the purview of this video, but suffice to say that some regulation is a good thing. The problem is knowing where to stop regulating and making sure those people doing the regulating are doing their jobs correctly. Someone, for instance, can propose a regulation and claim it will have a positive effect on society, while in reality, the regulation will harm society at large and probably just enrich a few, including sometimes the ones supposedly being regulated. George Stigler, who's a Nobel Prize winner in economics, is probably the first person to define regulatory capture. He said it occurs when those who are subject to regulatory action actually gain control of the regulatory process. So this means that those who are being regulated can now shape the laws and policies to work in their own favor. What we end up with is a situation worse than if we had no regulation at all. The new regulation tends to keep competitors out of the market. It puts upward pressure on prices and limits consumers' choices. The more regulations there are, and the more complex the government's regulatory apparatus, the worse regulatory capture becomes. So, what are some historical examples of the problem? Well, first, there's the New Deal program. Now, there were lots of regulations put on lots of industries, everything from farming to transportation to utilities. And many companies in the transportation sector, for instance, formed lobbies, and those lobbies then donated to government officials. And those government officials turned around and passed laws and regulations, which, for instance, favored one business and hurt a competitor. Fast forward to the 1970s, before they were deregulated, airlines were able to charge very high prices, largely because of the regulations, which protected them from competition. A little more recent, the financial ratings market is a very good example of how this whole process of regulatory capture works. The regulatory staff in the government that oversee the operations of large rating agencies like Moody's and S&P are almost all former employees of those companies. Conversely, it is very common that the heads of those same regulatory agencies will work for a ratings company when they leave their government work. This is sometimes called a revolving door, and it illustrates the conflicts of interest that usually underlie regulatory capture.